Hey everybody, it's me, Kai Man, and today I want to talk about religion versus consciousness. Now, the reason why I want to talk about religion is because right now one of the oldest religions is Hinduism, and it is the most studied religion right now is Hinduism, and then Christianity, then Islam, and then the rest of Buddhism, and then the rest of them. So anyway, the reason why I really want to talk about religion is because it is basically the basis for consciousness. So when religion comes around, it is the basic. When we talk about levels of consciousness, religion is the basic. This is like the first level. I talked to you guys about being woke versus conscious, and how being woke is the basic level of consciousness. Well, religion is the same. It is the basic level of consciousness. It wasn't meant to just be religious. You're supposed to move into a state of an enlightenment. But religion has a lot of what we would consider to be like dogma, practices that kind of teach you how to hold religious beliefs. It teaches you, in a sense, how to hold traditions and rituals and things of that nature. But you have to really go past religion. And the reason why I'm telling you to go past religion is because religions, there's always a mediator. So much to say, between you and God, there is a mediator, which is your pastor, your bishop, preachers, priests, prophets, and things of that nature. These people are what you would consider the go-between you and God. But when you begin to realize that you don't need a preacher, bishop, or to get to God, that you can do that on your own, you become to move into what would be considered as a conscious level, when you understand that you can have that connection on your own, and that you already do. You right now, and I've been talking to my partner about this, because there's always been a kind of war or battle between religion and consciousness, so to speak. And the battle has been where you have, and mostly it's African American preachers or bishops that will tell you not to believe in consciousness in the state of the practices that one practices in order to become conscious. So, and I'm saying this because just recently, I think it was Pastor Jamal Bryant who stated that using sage as a practice is witchcraft. Now, I'm gonna really go into that a little bit further. Now, African Americans, our roots we have African roots in history. All of the practices that we practiced prior to being enslaved and being brought over to America, these are things that we practice. That was part of our religion, so to speak. That was what we did. We, burned sage and incense, and did all those different things that, when we were enslaved, and our captors would tell us that all those things were witchcraft. So what happens is, when Christianity came about, the slave master would give those who are now like preachers the Bible, and it was used in a way to control the slaves. And so, in a sense of, because think about this now, we're all the way in Africa, we're utilizing the practices that we practice normally, and then all of a sudden now these practices, because we've come over to America, and the slave owner is pretty much trying to keep us in control and keep us praying to, what would be considered as his God, and basically saying that slavery was okay, to enslave, other people in such a way, that it states within the Bible. Now, in order to keep us under a particular set of rules, we had to have some type of order, and then Christianity became that particular type of order for us. We had to do away with the practices that we once practiced prior to that, became voodoo, witchcraft, or whatever it is that one would consider it to be at this particular time and state. But these are things that we were doing before we came over here. These are part of who we are. We are the only people or culture that uses someone else's religion, uses someone else's everything in order to live and be and to have our own being. We're the only people who do not use our own original practices, because now it's considered to be witchcraft. And it's funny how it's not us who told us that it was witchcraft, but it was, the ones, our captors, or who enslaved us. And now we have, African American preachers who are saying that the things that we are doing that are part of our heritage and our culture are wrong, and that it's witchcraft. It's kind of sad. Actually, it's not kind of sad. It's really sad, because it's like a person who is black and hates being black. I kind of equivalent it, to the same thing. I think it's the same equivalence, yet and still, of course, they would not see it that way, but I most certainly do see it that way. Now, recently I had the opportunity of watching a Netflix series called Queen Sono. And on Queen Sono, there were these Africans who were going about the country and taking, the Africans out of slavery, mental slavery, physical slavery, and they happened to one day go into this church. They went into this church, and I really want to talk about this, because it's very important how the people that would try to assist us in removing us from bondage are the ones who are always considered to be, the rule breakers, or the ones who are wrong in the way in which they do it. And so what I believe is, us being more conscious and going back to our roots, we have those people who are telling us that that's wrong. We shouldn't want to be those things. We should only want to be Christians, and we should follow this, set of rules or this dogma, which Christianity does in a way. And I'm not talking about Christianity in a sense too, where I'm telling you not to believe. You believe whatever it is that you want, but what I do ask you to do is do some research about your own history. So here it is, we have these dogmatic practices and things that we can't do or should only do, but yet and still, I think what's really happening is that a lot of people are leaving these mega churches, and they are beginning to become self-actualized, and they're beginning to understand that there's no middleman necessary in order to get to the spiritual level that they're seeking, that this is something that they can do on their own. There doesn't need to have to be a prayer in between. They can actually go to God and, themselves, and beginning to realize more things about themselves, consciously. A lot of people have been through what we would consider to be church hurt, where they've sat in churches for 20, 30 years. The churches hurt them in so many different ways, physically, emotionally. There are some people who have not grown in any way, shape, or form, and have been sitting in church for 20 and 30 years, going to church Wednesday night Bible study, Sunday morning service, afternoon service, and, being a part of the ministry and all these different things. But them as a person are not growing in any way, shape, or form. And a lot of people are beginning to look at those things. So if I were And I'm going to take this even further. There are a lot of preachers and pastors who are now talking to people outside of the church. They're getting what we would consider counseling because they know that a lot of the things that they're talking about in churches is not factual. It's not. They're coming to their own realization that what they've been saying and doing in all these periods of time is not accurate and not truthful and is not beneficial in a sense to people. And so they're having a hard time because they're wanting to come out and say these things. But of course, if they say these particular things, they've been saying something totally different for ages. So how do they do it without losing their whole congregation? How do they do it, without, losing, people's trust and things of that nature? But they know what it is that they're saying is not accurate, and things that they should not be saying any longer. But then you also have some pastors and preachers and bishops who refuse to acknowledge, they know what they're saying, and they're kind of changing up in a sense of what they're saying or how they're saying it, but not in a way to make you go and do something totally different, because their church are mega churches. They're making a lot of money, and who can live, in a sense where, I've had these mega churches and I make, all this money and I drive these cars and I live in these expensive homes, that now if I tell them the truth, then I'm going to lose all of that. I want you guys to really be aware and to really do your research. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just stating some facts for you. Now, going back to the Queen Sono episode, it was episode 3 in Queen Sono. It was a church scene, and the leader of the revolutionary group that was coming in to actually free mentally and physically people that were being enslaved. And I'm not talking about they were in chains and things of that nature, but they are mentally, just like we are in today's time, mentally and physically in chains, and some of us don't even know it. But anyway, as he's walking in the church, they ended up having, you gotta watch this episode. It's really powerful episode, and I hope that I can do it justice. But as they're walking in, there's a church service, people having church. They had the passing of the basket around, and these people, you can obviously tell they don't have a whole lot of money, but they're putting their money into this basket, and this preacher is talking about basically them putting their money in the basket. Anyway, so the leader of the group says, "You are what we would call an agent for imperial oppression." And he's talking to the preacher. "Instead of building your own systems of self-determination, what do? You ask us to hope, to pray, so that you greedy people can consume it all. See, the white man told you to have faith in his God while he stole from you. And now our very own black brothers are using the same God to exploit us. The time has come, my brothers and sisters, to remember the power we've always had within us for thousands of years. You need to return to your God now. Her name is Africa. Go up and serve her." So all these things that we have been doing all this entire time, we have learned these lessons from the ones who enslaved us, and then we actually go out and enslave other people. This is very important. So I want you guys to really look at religion in the basis of what it is. And when you're thinking about, I want to be on a more conscious level, you still have the church that's feeding you all this kind of food when you guys are having church picnics and having all your church fish fries and all this other stuff. Think about the food that you're being fed that keeps you in bondage. So if you eating all that fried chicken and you eating stuff that's really unhealthy for you, the church is really not helping you to become more conscious. It's really not helping you to get to a state of enlightenment where you and God have this whole relationship that's spiritual more than physical, with it paying through your money, your tithes, offerings, your time, many of years, going through church hurt where the pastor done hurt you, the pastor's wife talking about you, and all these different things. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you what not to do. You do whatever it is that you want to do. But I'll ask you to sit down and really think about the level of consciousness that you have when you have been sitting in a church for so many years and you have not grown as an individual. If you're still backbiting, so to speak, and you're still, talking about other people, and you're still, don't have a peace within your own self, because that's not what the church is teaching you. They're teaching you the same scriptures over and over and over and over and over every year. They're recycled. There's only certain scriptures that they actually tell you about, and I'm not saying that the Bible is wrong. I believe that, all of the things that are in there, some of them things are metaphorical. I think some of it is mythological. I think some of it, is history. I think there's different portions or different parts of different types of lessons that we can learn in the Bible. But I think that a lot of the things that, anything that you want to do that's outside of what they want you to do, because the more that you begin to become more self-aware and actualize in your own mind and know your own power, then you don't need the church, so to speak, or you don't need the preacher or the pastor, so to speak. So what happens to them? You have to really begin to open up your mind and think about these things. What happens to me if, people begin to be more conscious, if they realizing that the same spiritual practices that are in the Bible, because they say these things too. And I want you to know that some of the practices and the things, they talk about myrrh, they talk about frankincense, burning frankincense and myrrh, all these different things. And, at the same time, you got to be able to discern what is the right thing for you. You know what I'm saying? So all these things that they were doing in the Bible is things that people who are of a conscious mind are doing as well. And so you really have to look at this from a different perspective. All I ask you to do is do some research. Really do some research. And again, I can tell you that there are more pastors than there are not that know that the things that they are teaching in their churches is not accurate. It's not truthful, and it's not helpful. But some of them will not stop only because they're afraid of what their wives might think, what their churches might think, what their fellow pastors might think. You could think about I can't think of is it Bishop Carlton Pearson? I can't even think of his name right now, and that might be his name. But how years ago, how he came out and said all these things that they were doing, that he was doing. He understood that there was something more. There are a lot of preachers that have come to that same conclusion, but are still in these churches because they are afraid to do the right thing. They are afraid because they are thinking what you people are going to be saying about them, which is we all should be wanting to get to the truth. So no matter what you were saying 10 years ago, if you've come to the truth right now and you're trying to explain the truth to me, it's up to me right now to do the research, not talk bad about you because now you've come into a state of enlightenment and that you're willing to share this information with me. Thank you. Now let me go and do the research for myself. Let me see if what he is talking about is accurate. Instead of dogging and hating and all these different things, I'm asking you guys, religion is just the basis. It's just the foundation. You are supposed to go beyond religion, go into consciousness, into the different levels so that you yourself can be enlightened, so you can change your own life. They've got you sitting here waiting around on God and, Jesus take the wheel. Jesus ain't want to take the wheel. Jesus was saying before he left, Jesus was like, you shall do more important and greater things than I did. He don't want you waiting on him. You're supposed to do what you came to do. You're supposed to become more enlightened. When you look at Jesus' life, the way that y'all have portrayed Jesus is totally not what it was. He went off way more often than not to meditate, to pray, to be by himself, to build himself up. He did those things. The same God or energy that was in Jesus is in you, and you have the same abilities. You don't need Jesus to take the wheel. You need to take the wheel. Anyway, this is not what I really how I wanted to do this video, but this is what came out. So I'm going to let it ride. But again, I want you guys to really understand that, the basis for consciousness, starts out with religion. But you're not supposed to stay there. You're supposed to take yourself into a higher state of enlightenment. We've gotten to the point where we worship the leaders, and all the leaders do actually change the rules most often to suit themselves or to suit their churches. There's a lot of people who stop going to church because they feel lost. They don't know, and they understand that what it is that they've been taught is not right, but they don't know what the next thing to do is. They don't know how to get to the next level. I'm telling you, do your own research and get your own become more aware of who you are and what it is that you've come here to do. It starts with the self. It doesn't start outside of self. And that's what religion does, is it takes you outside of yourself and not within yourself, so that you can find. There's so many quotes that when they're talking about, when I looked for myself, I found God. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? But we've all been taught to not do these particular practices that we do, those who are in the conscious community, that may be burning sage and lighting candles and whatever, meditating and doing those particular things. Christianity does the same thing. They worship rules. They worship, church services and regulations, the pecking order, and all of those different things, but we have to begin to look at things in a different way, so that we can move past just that. Because that is stagnation. Being in religion, so to speak, is kind of stagnation. It keeps you at a certain level, and you can't really go any further or any higher. If you're wanting to always evolve, how can you evolve in a space of stagnation? Think about it. Just think about it. Hopefully I wasn't too all over the place. But again, check out that episode on Netflix, the series of Queen Sono. Check out episode 3. The beginning, from the beginning on, is really good. It's really thought-provoking. It makes you really think, how deeply we are enslaved. We are deeply enslaved, and I want to say, anyone that tries to keep you from evolving and growing, they are more so enslaved than you are. Think about it. Peace out. If you guys share this video, if you got any comments, put them below. Make sure that if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, that you subscribe and hit the bell off to your right, my left, so that you are notified every time that a new video is being published. But I implore you to do your own research and start thinking about all these different things that they have been putting on you and making you think and do and be, or not think, because they don't want you to think. If you think, then you can be subservient and I can control you. But the minute you start thinking about evolving and growing and the things of spirituality and of God, then people have a problem with that. Like, you're not supposed to seek. You're supposed to seek. Check it out. Deuces. I love you guys. Peace out.